What's going on, everybody? Kalip's Tech here, coming back at you with another video. In this video, we're going to be revisiting the Samsung Galaxy A23 LTE and going over whether or not it's still a good phone to buy in late 2022. Now, before we go any further, as always, I do want to remind you to hit that subscribe button. And in case you want to learn more about this phone, I will be linking to several other videos about it in the description, as well as some information about pricing, availability, and some of my favorite smartphone accessories. But with that being said, let's get into it. Now, one thing I do want to point out here is that this phone is not officially launched in the US. The reason I bring this up is because there is a really similar phone, the Samsung Galaxy A23 5G, that actually is being offered through US carriers. But this is the 4G version of that phone that came out quite a bit earlier. And again, this phone is not officially launched in the US, so if you are in the US and you want to get it, you will have to get it factory unlocked. That being said, it is pretty easy to find. And while, of course, getting it factory unlocked, you're not going to get any crazy carrier deals like you can get with the Samsung Galaxy A23 5G. For what it is, I think it's still pretty affordable. Now with this phone, we're getting a 6.6-inch 90Hz PLS TFT display with a resolution of 1080p, a PPI of 400, an aspect ratio of 20:9, and an 83% screen to body ratio. So for being more of an entry-level phone, this is a really good display. At 6.6 inches, it's definitely on the larger side. So this is a great thing if you're going to be on your phone a lot. And with a 20:9 aspect ratio, we're getting a taller and more narrow form factor. So if you're doing something like watching a video in landscape mode, for example, you're going to get a more immersive experience. And if you're doing something like reading, browsing the web, using social media, you'll be able to fit more content on the screen without having to scroll as much. Aside from the size and dimensions, of course, the image quality itself is really good as well. With a 1080p resolution, everything is going to be nice and sharp. And the PLS TFT display, while not being anything fancy like an AMOLED, still is giving us some nice looking colors and decent brightness. And with the 90Hz refresh rate, the movement on the screen is going to be a little bit faster and smoother. So if you're doing something like watching videos, playing games, or just using the phone in general, things are going to feel nicer and more premium. So in general, if you are looking for more of an entry-level phone and you want to make sure it has a good display, I feel like you're really not going to be disappointed here. Now for storage, the Samsung Galaxy A23 LTE is getting 128GB of internal storage with microSD card expansion, so this is a really good amount of storage. And the interesting thing about this is the Samsung Galaxy A23 5G, or at least the US version, only has 64GB. And while to be fair, the international version of the A23 5G also has 128GB, I just think it's kind of funny that the 4G version of this phone still has double the storage of the US version of the A23 5G. But that being said, in general, if you are looking for more of an entry-level phone, but you still want to make sure you have a bunch of storage, the Samsung Galaxy A23 LTE is going to be a pretty good choice for you. And again, this phone does have microSD card expansion too, so if you want to offload stuff like photos and videos, for example, you always can. Now for security features, this phone does have Face Unlock, as well as a fingerprint scanner right here on the power key, so pretty much the same spot as the A23 5G. But let's go ahead and give it a try. There we go, one more time. And there we go. So as you can see, real fast and responsive, no issues at all. And again, remember, this phone does have Face Unlock too, so if you want to use that instead, you always can. Now taking a look at the camera setup here. Up front, we got a water drop notch for the selfie camera. This camera is 8 megapixels. Then on the back, we got a quad camera setup with a 50 megapixel main camera, a 5 megapixel ultra wide camera, a 2 megapixel macro camera, and a 2 megapixel depth sensing camera. So in general, as far as features go, this phone has pretty much everything, including an ultra wide camera and a macro camera. And aside from just having the features, the photo quality itself is actually really good as well. That being said though, keep in mind it does have its limits, and if you're really into mobile photography and you really just want to get the best photo quality possible, then this is probably not going to be the phone for you, because although on one hand I do think the photo quality we're getting here is really good for more of an entry-level phone, it's still not going to be nearly as good as something like a $1,400 flagship phone, or even for that matter, something like the Samsung Galaxy A33 5G is still going to have significantly better photo quality than this. But that being said, if you're just taking photos for something like Instagram, for example, and you want things to look nice, but you still don't need the absolute best quality, and that kind of situation, the Samsung Galaxy A23 5G is really all you're going to need. Now for video, this phone has a max recording quality of 1080p in both the rear and front cameras. For some reason, I kind of thought it had 2K, but I think that's just the Samsung Galaxy A22 5G. So just keep in mind, again, this phone does max out at 1080p for videos, so if you want to record in 4K, you are going to have to get something a little bit higher end. But that being said, for what it is, I do think the video quality is pretty decent, and if you're just recording a couple videos here and there, maybe for something like Snapchat, for example, where the quality isn't super important, in that kind of situation, this phone will at least get the job done. Now when it comes to RAM and processor, the Samsung Galaxy A23 LTE is getting 4GB of RAM with a Qualcomm Snapdragon 680 4G processor. Now as the name suggests, keep in mind, again, this is not a 5G phone. The Samsung Galaxy A23 5G is a completely separate device, which I have also covered on the channel. But that being said, surprisingly, for a 4G phone, this is actually a really fast device. In fact, in my opinion, as far as 4G phones made in 2022, this is pretty much the fastest one I've seen. Now that being said, of course, compared to an old 4G flagship phone, like the iPhone XS Max for example, this phone is still not going to be nearly that fast. But again, for a budget 4G phone made in 2022, compared to something like the Motorola Moto G Stylus 4G for example, I do think this phone is quite a bit faster than that. So honestly, if you really don't care about 5G connectivity and you want more of an entry-level mid-range phone that still has decently good performance, I do think this phone will be a pretty good choice. Now, I did run a benchmark test on this phone using Geekbench 5. And here are the scores I got. What I recommend doing is running this test on your current phone and comparing your results to these, and that's going to give you a better idea of whether or not this phone's going to be an upgrade for you. But again, in general, for a 4G phone, I am actually really impressed by this score, and in my experience, the phone is a lot faster than you might think. Now this phone has a 5000 mAh battery that supports 25 watt fast charging, so pretty much the exact same as every other mid-range Samsung Galaxy A series phone, so not really a surprise there. But in general, this is a great battery. In the US, a 5000 mAh battery is pretty much the largest battery you're going to find in a smartphone, and even outside the US, it's still definitely on the larger side. So if you're looking for a phone that's going to have great battery life and longevity, the Samsung Galaxy A23 LTE, like most A series phones, is going to be a great choice. And with the 25 watt fast charging, you can expect to get great charging speeds as well. That being said though, keep in mind, if you do want to get the best charging speeds out of this phone, you will need a 25 watt fast charger, and in case you don't have one, I will be linking to my favorite one in the video description. So definitely check that out if you need it. But again, in general, if you're looking for a phone with a really good battery, the Samsung Galaxy A23 LTE is going to be a great choice. Now when it comes to software, this phone does have Android 12, and I imagine it's going to be getting Android 13 pretty soon, and several other major updates in the future. So if having the latest version of Android is important to you, then a phone like this is definitely going to be a great choice. In addition to this, the Samsung Galaxy A23 LTE does have NFC, so if you like to make contactless mobile payments using tap and pay, then you'll be happy to know that's not going to be a problem with this phone. But in conclusion, is the Samsung Galaxy A23 LTE still a good phone to buy in late 2022? Now honestly, I'm kind of 50-50 here. On one hand, for a mid-range 4G phone, this is pretty much the best one you can get in my opinion. For that matter, really the only good 4G phone left in my opinion is the Motorola Moto G Stylus LTE, and honestly, unless you want a stylus and a slightly larger display, this phone is pretty much better in every other way. That being said though, as of the recording of this video, this phone is going for around $200–250, and for that price, especially if you're in the US, you could just get the Samsung Galaxy A23 5G, which is objectively just a better phone than this. And even aside from that, there's so many other options. I mean, if you want to record 4K videos and have an AMOLED display for example, you could always get the Samsung Galaxy A33 5G for a little bit more than this. So the bottom line here is, just by itself for what it is, compared to pretty much every other mid-range 4G phone, I would say the Samsung Galaxy A23 LTE is the best. But that being said, for the money, once you bring 5G phones into the equation, there are just so many better options out there that honestly, in late 2022, I really wouldn't recommend getting this phone. But if you happen to find a really good deal on it, and you're really just looking for a mid-range phone that has good performance, a really nice display, tons of storage, a good camera, and a great battery, and you really don't care about 5G connectivity, then sure, in that case, while this phone, in my opinion, really is still not going to be the best option, if this kind of thing is really what you're looking for, I still don't think you're going to be disappointed with it. Now once again, if you want to learn more about this phone, I will be linking to several other videos about it in the description, as well as some information about pricing, availability, and some of my favorite smartphone accessories. But that's it for this video. If you enjoyed it and found it useful, be sure to give it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button. Don't forget to follow Kalipis Tech on Twitter and Instagram, and as always, I will see you in the next video.